Good afternoon, everyone. See some familiar faces. Raise your hand if you were here for the first panel. Yeah, most people. Okay, so I'll make some portions really short. Well, welcome, everybody. I know it's a warm room, so you know we're used to being in dance class, and this is warming up our body, which is really great. My name is Huang, Executive Director of World Arts West. I introduced myself to you earlier today. Again, before we begin our program, I want to acknowledge that this program is taking place on the unceded ancestral land of the Malonga. This is weekend one of the 45th annual World Arts West Dance Festival. Of course, earlier today we talked about 3 weekends. For more information on the 3 weekends of our programming, please talk to our staff in the front. Last few years, World Arts West has undergone a deeply transformative equity journey. For the first time, World Arts West board staff and festival team are majority cultural artists that represents the diversity of the artist community that we serve. Yes! Through our deep listening of the artist community the last few years, we're rolling out festival themes that are timely and relevant. This year, dance as activism. Next year, dance, health, and healing. So stay tuned. Why are we doing dance as activism this year? This festival's theme shares the power of cultural dance to challenge societal norms, preserve cultural heritage, and inspire social change. We have about 200 artists this year in the festival performing in artist dialogues and teaching workshop. Every single one is deeply engaged in social change. To meet the current historical moment, cultural artists now are telling stories of resistance and revolution. You will hear some of that today. I will be moderating the conversation today. This is not an quote-unquote expert panel where we are just feeding the information to the cultural artists. Of course, the artists today have lots and lots of expertise. This artist dialogue is designed to be a community dialogue, community conversation. So we want to, it's a back and forth, you know, we'll have time for the 4 of us to talk, but we'll also have time for Q&A in the audience. During the time of the panel dialogue, Akil, raise your hand, co-curator of this artist dialogue series may chime in with some questions. But again, we want to hear from you today about this topic and also what you'd like to see in our programs at this point moving forward. Artist Dialogue Series this year has 4 topics. Earlier today, you heard the dialogue on queer identity in cultural arts. Right now, we have a panel called Dance as a Form of Resistance. Come back next Sunday. We have 2 more panels, one female and child empowerment and evolution of traditional dance in contemporary times, moderated by Kiazi. It is my great honor to now welcome 3 amazing cultural artists today to today's conversation who are leading the charge in dance, activism, and deep social change. First, we want to start with our elder, Miss Alleluia, Panis. And we know her driving force behind cool arts and a respected elder artist in the U.S. and Philippines. Alleluia co-founded Cool Arts and has served as director since 1985. Wow. Alleluia has received many prestigious awards from Gerbode, Rockefeller Foundation, San Francisco Arts Commission, California Arts Council, National Endowment for the Arts, Creative Work Fund. She was a board member of BRAVA, Bay Area Dance Coalition, Artist Committee member of National Performance Network, and juror for the Ethnic Dance Festival. She's also recipient of the prestigious SFAC Artist Legacy Award, Gerbode Special Artist Award, Dance USA Artist Award, and the Hewlett 50 Arts Commission, I believe is the largest single grants given to artists in the history of the United States. By the way, Alleluia performed in our very first festival, 1978. They're building. All right, and next we have Miss Portsha Jefferson. Welcome. Is a professional dancer and choreographer trained in ballet, modern, jazz, and African-derived styles, who specializes in Haitian folkloric dance. She began her formal training at the age of 6 at the Marshall Woody Dance Academy in Beaumont, Texas. Established in 2004, Ms. Jefferson is the founder and artistic director of Rabatouline, an arts organization that presents Haitian music, dance, and culture through classes, workshops, and performances. So Rara celebrates its 20th anniversary this year. Which, at the end of the dialogue, Portsha will talk a little bit about their 20th anniversary. Hope you all come and celebrate with her. All right, last but not least, we have Mr. Kiazi Malonga. He's a second-generation Congolese American born into a family of artists. He was first introduced to the Ngoma drum at the age of 2 by his father, Malonga Cascalor, a world-renowned traditional drummer, dancer, and choreographer from Congo, Brazzaville, and became the lead drummer of his father's dance company, Congo, at age 16 and began teaching as well. Kiazi is a prolific musician. He also founded and runs Pelisa Energy, which aims to close the energy gap in Central Africa by supplying solar power technologies. I am thrilled that Congo will be closing out our festival this year. Come and check them out September 8th at the Presidio. The festival is free. And let's begin the conversation. Kiazi is also the co-curator of the Artist Dialogue program this year. Alrighty, we have a lot of sort of really profound questions. I will start with the title of the program, Dance as Resistance. And to the speakers, what does that mean to you, Dance as Resistance? Maybe we can start with Miss Alleluia.
All right. Dance as Resistance. If you all are, some of you are from a colonized country or past, first thing that goes is culture and spirituality. This is how we are conquered. And so to maintain our practices of movement. And for most cultures, meditation, there's always a form of meditation in movement and dance, in any kind of ritual or ceremony. And so that where our spirit resides, where our soul resides as a people. And so to me, that's probably the first and foremost, outside of, because it does connect directly to that depth of culture beyond entertainment. That's not to say that entertainment is bad. We love joy, don't we? So, but it's a thing that usually is the first that gets cut off. But it's also the last for people who have been colonized to hold on to. These are the things that, because they are in our bodies, in our hearts. That does not say that just because you are of the same of bloodline that you would know these things. There's always training, there's always instruction, and there's always practice. But that in itself, the maintenance of movement and dance and arts and food and all of that is a form of resistance, as well as we are living, we are here now in this moment. That in itself is testament to that.
Thank you, Ms. Alleluia. For Kiazi to chime in Dance as Resistance, I know we spoke at length during the curatorial meetings, the importance of this particular topic. What does dance resistance mean to you? Why do you feel that it's an important topic? Like, what are we resisting?
Can you hear me? I'm taking this apart while I was sitting down to put it back together. Just fidgeting and became too useless. I actually thought about something this morning, kind of piggybacking a bit off of what Ms. Alleluia was alluding to around the impacts of colonialization and its influence on traditional cultures, I think that pre-colonialism, dance as resistance probably was not a concept. In many of those indigenous cultures, it's a part of life. It's not performative. There are really no audience and presenter barriers. It's communal. And so the structure has been really imposed on getting in line, signaling before you get over, right? Like scheduling. It's not on my calendar on Google the 5th. Then at that point is when you have dance and form and like movement breaking away from like the structure that has really been imposed. I think not more recently, but when you look at like ancient times and probably the past 150 years or so, I think the concept and thought of dance being resistance or being used as a way to resist is really against kind of just the overall confines and structures. I don't want to say Western ways of living, because you also have these barriers throughout the world, but I think it's something that in the longer trajectory of time is more recent. So I mean, you know, it's also resistant against certain things that happen in life. Like for example, in the culture that I'm from, and probably many other cultures, loss of life is typically like sad, right? You feel down, especially if the person is close. But when you dance, which is something that we do around that time, you're resisting against the natural feeling of sorrow, against the natural feeling of loss, and you're celebrating the person's life. So depending on how you look at it, dance can always be seen as a way of resistance. So it might be different from what we talked about, but it was something that was on my heart.
Share whatever you'd like to share. This is a profound and very expansive subject, not to be covered in one conversation, right? One reason we wanted to begin doing these artist dialogues is to begin conversations on different topics, not as the comprehensive space to cover the entire subject within 90 minutes, obviously, right? So, yeah, Ms. Portsha, I'm going to talk a little bit about, so much of your work is about resistance. What does dance resistance mean to you? How does it show up in your work?
I will say that, dance as a resistance is also reclaiming our narratives. It is reclaiming our ancestral wisdom. With the type of work that I do, I am representing a country, IET, who has made its mark, I think, in history, especially with the enslaved Haitians who decided to rise against the oppressors and establish the first independent Black republic in the Western Hemisphere. That needs to be celebrated. So my work is encouraged because of that. There's a resilience, within Haitian people, and so it is my duty and my work to carry on those stories, the struggles, the celebrations as well. And my work definitely it speaks to that. It speaks to that. So, yeah.
Can I say something else?
Please.
It's also creating our narratives in the moment, not just in the past, informing it with the actual form of movement from the tradition, which means we carry forward our ancestral language through the lens of the contemporary, because it's an expression of our ancestral parental guidelines. So that we are contributing as artists by creating those very, now what we call choreography, but really a narrative, right, that speaks to our experiences now, but at the same time, another foot is honoring those who came before us. So that's, to me, that's one of the really top ways of keeping this form alive and relational and important to all of us, not just to us, but also to the world.
I think you and I both agree on that. When we were in Cuba, I remember we had a conversation. We were in Cuba together in 2016, and we were talking about just the importance of being true to the art and not really just doing steps. You know what I mean? Like, I want my students to do more than just steps, because what I'm doing, what we all do, are dances that are done in the temple. They're done in sacred places. They're done in ceremony, and so that's really important. You know, we are also as cultural educators and people who are preserving these cultures, that we make sure that when we're teaching and when we are in these spaces, in these communities, that we are giving the importance of really embodying. That's my word. I love embodiment, right? Embodying the movement and not just doing steps. And that's also a form of resistance as well. And you can really tap into it and let that energy flow out. It's resistance.
Thank you both. Yes. So to dive in a little bit more deeply regarding the context, the context, the history of some of the stories that you all have shared with me. In a few minutes, I'm going to ask Alleluia about the sort of historically how Philippine dance has been presented over the years here in the diaspora. Right now, I'm going to pivot to Kiazi. So many of the dancers and artists in our community not only have utilized music and dance as a form of resistance, but have played prominent roles in political resistance in their lives. This is artists of today and artists of yesterday, and hopefully artists of tomorrow. Hey, Akil. So, love to hear a little bit about that, how dancers and artists have shown up in really, really powerful political resistance movement. And Kiazi, you shared with me like how your father, Malonga, came to this country, and how he was what an important role he had in political resistance back in the Congo, and how that shaped the current generation today. I think your story actually speaks to many cultural artists in their countries and how they came to this country.
Yeah, no, 100%. Thank you for that. I actually have one more recent that just came to me as an example of using dance and art as a form of resistance. But to speak first to kind of what you're referencing. So again, my father was Malonga, who was actually born in Cameroon because his father was in the military. Yeah, so they were traveling around during World War II. So he was born in Cameroon, but from Congo, Brazzaville, and was growing up 11, 12, 13, 14 around the time of independence. So 1960. That was, if you know a bit about the history of Africa, I think Ghana was first in 57, 58, and then it just kind of started happening everywhere. Everybody was kind of getting the itch. And during that time, you had full participation from the population, elderly, middle-aged, right on down to the children, who were all involved in different levels of organizing, of really collaborating, and the artists were also there during the marches. And so there was one rhythm that was dubbed like the French name was Air Pionnier, which refers to the translation is like Boy Scouts, Boy and Girl Scouts, that were a part of the marching that was happening. And just like today, anytime you have a manifestation outside, be it because of brutality or you're like outside of I used to work in PG&E, so there would be sometimes people who were against the big energies. There's always a chant, there's always a rhythm, there's always a spirit, and there were rhythms that we play until this day that were adopted during that time period. And my father being heavily influenced by that, 11, 12, 13, then went on to join the military and was part of, I would say, not a cohort, but a generation, like a group of folks that were very, very influential in 17, 18, so just under the age group of people who were taking over the country. Fast forward, they kind of got in trouble, and Pops had to skedaddle because a lot of those people that he left behind didn't make it. But ultimately, throughout those times, art, music, dance was always a way to get attention and to help inspire and keep a spirit of enthusiasm and good fortune and help to pass a message in a way that was very effective. You fast forward throughout the history of what was the Alice Art Center, now Malonga Center for the Arts. As we all know, and Ms. Alleluia mentioned, like the arts are the first thing that go, they cut budgets, right? And that's happened several times. And the one time that I'm referencing, that I will reference, I was in undergrad at the time, and this was right before my father passed away, 2001, 2002. Jerry Brown, I think, was the mayor of Oakland during that time, and it was like, okay, we broke, budget cuts, we need to repurpose the Alice Art Center for something else. And all of the head honchos of all of the different communities got together, they planned, and they showed up probably several times at City Hall, but everything that was driving that was rhythm, was movement, was dance, was song, to officially resist and say, hell no, we won't go. I don't know if that was the chant, but it was basically the messaging that they provided, and that through that resistance, through art and dance, it saved the center. That probably happened 5, 6, 7 times, right? And so that's an older example in Congo, but then a more recent modern day example of how dance is used.
Yes, very many of us were there during that particular time. And of course, the former Alice Art Center is now named the Malonga Performing Arts Center. Another sort of topic that really came up in our planning conversation is how cultural dance has been presented in this country and elsewhere, including local presenters like World Arts West. Sometimes what's presented to the audience is through sometimes intentional, sometimes unintentional colonial lens. The results of audience thinking like, well, that is that particular cultural dance. Alleluia and I have talked extensively about this, how, for example, how World Arts West, I remember, World Arts West for many years in Ethnic Dance Festival, when we saw Philippine dance, it was a particular presentation with the big bucket sleeves and the string instruments, and not too much of indigenous presentations like Parangal. So, Alleluia, so much of your career has been to sort of bring forth the decolonizing of what people think arts, culture is. Can you talk a little bit about how, that sort of the context of the colonial lens of presentation and the work of decolonizing that, which is not unique to your community, honestly.
So I guess in the 1950s, it happened all over the world, where the big deal is that to create folkloric, now they call it folkloric, not folk, dances for the proscenium stage, so that it can show tourism, could get people to tour, to see, look at these beautiful things. In 1904, the United States at St. Louis Fair, Expo Fair, gathered all these indigenous people all over the world. And they brought, the United States brought the world to the Americans in the United States to show that this is the white man's burden, that we have a job to do so that you could see all these people that needs to be civilized. And many of these people died, right? Because especially from my area, they're tropical people. I mean, the climate is very different. So it was like 3 years, y'all, right? That they were there, they built their villages, the replica of villages. And so it is a political move for the government to see the United States is now an empire, right? Because they had just conquered Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Philippines, Guam. Is there another one? I think there were 5 that was purchased for $20 million. So this is a way to appease the Americans, right, the American people, that there is a whole wealth of stuff that can be had. And so then in the 50s, piggybacking off of that, there's a huge interest for people to travel to different countries. And so the way it was done is that create your folkloric dance companies. From Asia to Africa to the Americas, everybody had it. It was a beautiful thing because a lot of these dances, first of all, they were created by choreographers for the proscenium stage. But the local people never saw their dances on stage because, of course, especially if you're from a colonized country, those are not good dances. They're not evil. You're down on the ground. Those are peasants, whatever. So it elevated it, having it there. But again, who's the audience? It's not the locals. It's not the people. Despite that, we saw ourselves in all of that, right? Despite all of it. And yes, they were co-opted by those people that were in power. And so today, that resonates with us today. But I believe that we also, as people from that ancestry, we have also co-opted it. We also have taken, I think it's also a change of perspective and intentionality by saying, okay, this has happened, but we're gonna take it for ourselves, and we're gonna form the dances that we want to express our true culture, our true selves. And so I think that that's one of the first steps. So it goes beyond tourism. It becomes a reflection of ourselves. And these are our people that we have beautiful textiles, and we have beautiful movement, and we have beautiful jewelry, and we have beautiful ideas and concept of movement. And I think that's, for me, as a young artist at the time, it was something that really affirmed that there's beauty in us. It's not just, I'm not going to mention the types of dances that people were putting on deep stages, right? So I think today we have a chance to go beyond that by creating narratives of our experiences today and also experiences of immigration. But at the same time, utilizing the kinds of movement qualities, characteristics, where the energy comes from in the telling of the story. So we don't need to go to the ballet or the modern dance or all of that. We can inform it, but I think that we have enough language to tell our story in a way that makes sense to us. And believing in ourselves as artists, that connection to spirit continues to flow.
Thank you, Alleluia. Portia, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your artistic practice, cultural practice, and I know something you wanted to talk today to us about was, in particular, being a practitioner of Haitian dance and music, and how folks may have a misperception of what the culture is, what the spirituality is.
It's about to get juicy. It's about to get juicy. So yes, I wanted to talk about this particular topic simply because it is often misunderstood, but it is a large part of my work as well. So when you hear the word voodoo, what comes to mind? Just throw something out. Yes, witchcraft, black magic, sticking pins and dolls, and I don't really know voodoo to be that. And so when I say voodoo, I'm saying the feng word, which really means spirit. And so when you hear voodoo, that is a word that is taken out of context. That is a word that is used to instill fear. And really, if you're not aware or if you don't really know what it is, then yes, you're going to have these negative feelings about it. And so a part of my work has also been to demystify what voodoo or what voodoo is, and really highlight what voodoo is. You know, I started out just as someone who wanted to dance. I wanted to shake my butt. I wanted to just, you know, have a good time and not even really go deep into this practice. But because of the nature of these African dances, the African spirituality and African culture, it's really hard not to delve deeper into the spiritual aspect of it, because these dances, at least Haiti, and I'm pretty sure, you know, Kiazi's dances too, you know, these dances are actually still danced in temples, right? And so as I got older and as I wanted to really learn more and more about the spiritual part of the dances and why I'm doing what I'm doing and why am I feeling this amazing, not a scary connection, but an amazing connection, as if I'm actually communing with my ancestors. You know, I'm communing, I am feeling at peace, I'm feeling at ease, and it is because I am learning more about this spiritual tradition, which informs my movement. And the more I found out about the spiritual tradition, it really, really informed me as a researcher, as someone who's learning and, you know, really wanting to find out the ins and outs, you know, what these dances mean. I can't teach dances and I have no idea what they mean. Like, that's not effective to me at all. I have to know, what does this movement mean? I have to know, I love the drum. I love the drum, so I'm always with my brothers. I need to know this rhythm. I need you to tell me what, you know, goes with this. Like, it's really important. And so as I have done this research and as I have gone deeper into what voodoo is, it has really not only informed me, but it has informed my dancers, my dance company, because, you know, I've evolved now into doing ritual theater. Like I say, I do ritual theater, and I'm totally fine with that. I'm totally fine with saying I am unapologetically voodoo. That's what it is. That's the foundation of Haitian culture. And so I have to honor that. And I have to honor that in my work, in the pieces that I do, in everything that I do. So much so that I don't really disassociate the two. They're together. They're together for me. So when you come to a performance, not a class, when you come to a performance, you'll see and you'll hear the ritual chants. You'll see that we're doing dances that are danced in the temples. Of course, you know, I created for the stage, but, you know, we are still ultimately honoring voodoo. And so that is also my mission, so people can see the beauty of it. Not what they think it is, but really someone who has studied and someone who is also bringing the temple to the stage.
Thank you, thank you. Hope you're all staying.
Hey, I got some claps. Yes. So next time y'all hear voodoo, you can correct them and say, no, it's voodoo. And voodoo means what? Spirit. We are all spirited people. All spirited people. Thank you.
Knowledge, education, resistance, right? I want to give space to Akil. If you have Akil, there's been 4 of us co-curating the Artist Dialogue series and to come up with these 4 topics. Akil, I wonder if you have any questions for the speakers. If not, we'll move on, but I just want to give you space. Okay, great.
Something that I think has come up throughout all of your interests thus far. Common thread that I've understood from all of your insight thus far has been the impact of colonialism on dance, not just in the sense of like we are colonized people and our dance forms are under threat, but really the like colonial aesthetic and like the the imposition of colonialism in terms of the way in which it changes how dances are presented, what the aesthetics of the dances themselves are, and how audiences, engage with the dance work. And so I'm interested in each of your practices, how, as artists in America, where the landscape is so informed by these colonial, exoticized ideas of non-white dance, how do you navigate that in your work, and how do you resist those forces? I know that's big and loaded.
Kiazi, you wanna?
Thank you for that. I think my response would be two-part. In terms of navigating through that and resisting the forces, I personally, being a culture bearer, have made it, and this is just my own personal standard, like a must for me to travel back regularly to continue to stay grounded and connected to the culture, so that as many of the, there's just so much to learn. Like in Congo is geographically the size of California, but there are 53 languages spoken. So you go from here to Chico's too far, maybe here to Stockton. Language is different. The clothes is different. And so my personal first response of really trying to bring authenticity is making sure that I am constantly increasing my knowledge and staying connected to the culture, so that I can relate to people who are interested here and outside of the origins of what I'm teaching, and I can relate that to things that people who have had most of their experience outside of the Congo, make it relatable to them. Secondly, I've taken it a step further more recently to actually curate a full 10-day immersion trip to the Congo, Embrace Congo, that we just are probably not even a month back in the United States from taking the first group of 17. And so that the second part of the response is that the best way to kind of show, or one of the best ways to demonstrate and show an art form where you're getting most of your consumption outside of the origin, is say, you want to come along with me? You know what I mean? So it took some time, some years to kind of put the trip together, but ultimately the goal was to really show Congo culture in its purest form, and then also connect it to the influences that it's had outside of the Congo, which is where a lot of the connections were made for the people who can.
Yeah, Kiazi, I know that was a long time dream that you had, and I'm just beyond thrilled that you're able to make it happen. So I hope as a community at large, the Bay Area is a community that really supports arts, culture, dance, music. When cultural artists have different kinds of programs, classes, cultural immersion trips, performances, donation events. Alleluia has a 70th anniversary coming. It says 70th birthday coming in. Please come. Please show up. Please show up at programs like this for education, donation and buy tickets and so forth. I was going to ask. Yes. So. One thing I'd like to know from the speakers is we've talked today about the change you would like to see. In your journey of dance's resistance, decolonizing dance, music, decolonizing public perceptions, could you tell us about some of the changes that you have seen through what means? So, for example, Alleluia, I know you've been such an instrumental, key mentor for so many of the younger generation artists in opening up people's own knowledge of their own culture, and therefore changing the trajectory of their work, of their presentations, and so forth. So, yeah, Alleluia and whoever, maybe Alleluia, we can get started. Alleluia, say what kind of, you've been doing this work for decades now, what kind of change have you seen, and what was done to propel that change in dance's resistance?
I guess I've been bringing people to Mindanao, which is the southern part of the Philippines, not the north, not Manila, because that's where the indigenous people reside. And the culture is so different from other parts of the Philippines. And also way up north, which is like in the provinces. So I've been bringing folks there since 2002. It's been, it's very intimate, and there are probably 122 people that have experienced Tributor. I guess we had 12 tours because we do it every other year. And we go through ceremony, which is called Ipa. We actually live in the villages. More importantly, what I tell folks in terms of, because for me, it's growing leaders, right? So a lot of people that go to my tour, and I say tour because everybody's saying, why are you saying tour? It's tourism. No, because we are tourists. We are not, this is not our home. We are connected ancestrally, but we also have our privilege, a Western privilege that begins to show if you don't pay attention. This is such a loaded question. Communing with the folks there, with the idea of understanding of movement, like why do they do this movement? Why is that? And you go there, and the floor of their houses is made out of bamboo slats, and then you feel the rhythm, and you hear the bamboo swaying and the buzz, and you begin to feel something deeper than the movement, in your body, and it resonates and it connects to something really powerful. Again, that's just the beginning. Just because you did that, you think, oh, I'm so connected to the anthem. Oops.
Tell us you.
Can you hear me? So for me, I've seen a really huge change with a lot of the leaders. Eric Solano is one of the folks that I've been, I don't know whether the word is mentoring, really just giving advice, asking questions, and this, I guess the second thing with this is bringing people over here. You bring people over there and you bring people over here. Because oftentimes people think, oh, you look like them, you dress like them because you're wearing their for me, it will be a costume as opposed to my own regalia, right? But if you're performing it, that's not your people, you're wearing a costume. So why do you think that you're that? It needs to be, you need to clarify that you're, this is how I put it to folks. How would you like it if somebody represents you? So why would we try to bring people over here so they can speak and represent for themselves? The other thing is we are similar to Congo, where there are, 102 languages. And some of them don't even understand each other, right? And so it's important to know that one format is not enough. There's just so many interpretations. So when you come here, oh no, this is what I learned, this, so yours must be wrong. It's probably all right. And really just keep asking those questions, and also asking the question of like, what lens do I have today? Is it my colonial lens? Is it my Western privilege lens? Is it my savior mentality lens? Right, so they come there and they go, I'm gonna save the people at XYZ because they don't have this. They don't have water, they don't have the... First you gotta ask them, do you want me to help you? with your well, what is it that you need? Rather than going, I'm going to give you some clean water. You know, that's very colonized thinking, colonizer's way of thinking. So it's always asking the question of why are you doing what you're doing? Because this colonization stuff, they permeate. It's in there. So you always have to be vigilant when you're dealing with culture, when you're dealing with these kinds of study. I don't mind answering the question.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to pivot to audience questions in a moment, but same question for Portsha and Kiazi. In your dance activism, dance of resistance work, what change have you seen over the years, and what took place, in your opinion, prompted that change?
This just comes to mind just because we were talking about tours, taking people to different places. First of all, my brother, congratulations on your trip to Congo and also to the Philippines. I too have facilitated tours. I started taking folks from the Bay Area to IET in 2008 and did that up until 2017, and then took a turn because it was really important to me that people from the Bay and anybody who was interested, they were able to actually travel to Haiti, take dance classes, and really be a part of the culture so they can actually see for themselves. And so I think that one of the changes is that I feel like people were really about it. They really wanted to make that happen. They really wanted to immerse themselves in it. And so they were taking an initiative to make that happen. Now I'm taking people to Benin, West Africa, because that really is where Haitian dance derives from. And so I just got back 3 days ago too. So I'm a little discombobulated. So, forgive me if I'm all over the place, but I'm trying to, ground myself and reintegrate. It's been very challenging because it was such an amazing trip. But I think that that's really important to make sure that, we as folks who are preserving these cultures, and if we have the means to take interested folks to these places so they can get education, they can see how folks live and how, it's beyond the classroom, it's beyond the studio, right? They are basically immersing themselves into this culture. They can eat the foods, they can learn the songs, all of these things, and I think that also helps too. So just that's a change, one of the changes that I see. I mean, there's a lot. One of my sisters, Adia Whitaker, you guys may know who she is, of Aishe Dance Theater. She is so groundbreaking, and I'm just highlighting her because she actually just had a show here last week at Dance Mission, and I just love the way she's also using different mediums, technology. And I have a love-hate relationship with technology, right? But I like the way she uses it, and it's like Afro-futurism that, is really happening right now that I love, and it's bringing dance to a new level. So I just, respect new choreographers and people who are just thinking outside of the box, and again, not just doing steps, right? So that's super important, so yeah.
Yeah, and everyone, right? Everyone is at a different place in the trajectory of learning, realizing, accepting, revolutionizing. Wherever you are, wherever anyone is, just, just encourage everybody just show up, even if it feels so confusing and you don't understand the information fully at that particular moment. It's so powerful to be in community, and it's very powerful to be able to receive and touch and sometimes go on a cultural immersion experience. Again, before we pivot to audience questions, get your questions ready. Same question for you, Kiazi. In your artistic practice, cultural practice, dances resistance practice, what changes have you seen in your lifetime? Change in whatever way you want to see, you know? And in your opinion, what transpired to prompt that change?
Got it. I'll do my best to stay away from next week's topic. Cause that's what, yeah, no, it's just because next week's topic is it's a topic that's near and dear. It's more focused around just outside influences and the modernization of how you keep a tradition, like what types of evolution is quote unquote acceptable versus life in the bay. Versus, you know, natural evolution versus having too much outside influence to kind of taint. And so what I've had the luxury of having 4 different teachers from 4 different generations. Right? And so as you know, from generation to generation, whether it's like speaking, dancing, shucks, even writing, like there are changes. Like you can watch an interview on TV in black and white from somebody who's in America from like the 1950s and tell, oh, that's around the 40s and 50s because their way of communicating and speaking. Even listening to a radio interview, the audio is different than the way people communicate today, and it's the exact same with dance and with drumming as well. And so what I've experienced as far as resistance more recently is and this was probably just with globalization, the internet, everything you can kind of consume, everything from all parts of the world very easily. Things go viral. Those oftentimes have a way to influence how you look at yourself and the way you express your art. And in Congolese dance, in my humble opinion, there are positives to that, but it's also diluted a bit of the tradition. And one of the things that Ms. Alleluia and I think also my sister Portsha mentioned earlier was that dance, especially when we talk about cultural and traditional dance, is a way to communicate, and you're carrying kind of messages from generations before you. So there's an importance the same way people cherish texts that are thousands of years old, or like paintings that are really, really old that speak to a particular era and time. It's also important for us as musicians and dancers coming from a particular culture to preserve that. And so I think that more recently the resistance has been in keeping that, because it represents a time and culture, a belief system, traditions that are valuable to us. We're still trying to allow for space for a new generation to express themselves. So my biggest, I guess, acknowledgement or thing that I've noticed is just the kind of challenge between younger, newer artists and older artists around how to express in the same cultural practice, similar cultural rhythms, dances, songs, etc. And I've been able to see it from like my father's generation, and I had somebody else, second, third, and fourth generation, and I'm like 5th generation, and so I can kind of see the trajectory. And so that's kind of like the biggest form of resistance is like to stay as original and true as possible while still being relevant to the time and allowing for growth.
Yeah, thank you, Kiazi. And you told me for you, staying true is not necessarily doing exactly what your father told you. It is to always be authentically tapping into your own cultural identity and your multiple identities to express yourself. Your sister Moisi told me that of this kind of global impact of your CDs, beyond sort of the artistry, but in that, she told me, first of all, that Fadia Congo is sort of the epicenter of North American Congolese culture, and for the artists of Congolese diaspora that want to come to North America, yes, that Fadia Congo is where it is. So having these sort of anchoring institutions and places in our different cultural communities is very important. Secondly, she also told me that I believe she told me, many traditional artists in the Congo feel like in order to make a living as an artist, they must abandon their traditional artistic practice because you cannot make a living. What Moisi told me was, your successful CD projects have shown these artists you don't have to abandon your traditional roots in order to show up as a contemporary artist and to make a living as a contemporary artist. And I thought that was just really, really, really powerful, because I know that's something you've been really grappling with. We'd love some questions and comments from the audience. Feel free to ask the speaker questions, but also if you have an artistic practice, a cultural practice to share, and how you've been doing your own dances, activism work in your community, in your cultural community, feel free to share as well. I'm going to stand up so I can see you a little bit more clearly, and this includes, Noel, if you want to share anything. Yes, I'm going to come with the microphone, and please state your name.
Hi, my name is Ina Dallas, and I don't have anything to share at the moment except at the top of this talk and shared, and I very much understood the intention, which is to share that this is not a panel of experts, this is a community conversation. But I just want to say in this room that this was a panel of experts, and that I just appreciate you all sharing your wisdom and your spirit so much. So thank you.
Thank you, Ina. And Ina earlier also shared that you're part of the senior management of San Francisco Unified School District. So she's here and humbly to take this information from today to see how she can bring this information back to a mainstream American institution and so institute more dances activism there.
Yeah, so my position in San Francisco is I oversee the performing arts for the school district. And so in our department, we do our best to get cultural bearers in to work with our teachers, to work with our students. And I'm always very interested in any programs you all have, especially for youth. And also, since I got the mic back, I'm very interested in any tours that you all offer and all of those things for adults. So I'm hoping maybe it'll be shared through World Arts West or something like that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ina. Yes. And state your name, please.
Thank you both all. My name is Renuka. I am so fascinated, Portsha, by what you shared about this idea of ritual theater. So I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more on how spirit and ritual plays into your work and how it shows up in what you perform.
Ooh, that's a good question. I often struggle with saying ritual theater, even though I'm very aware and I know what it is that I'm doing with my work and where I am right now in my life. But my mentors were not necessarily happy with that because they're old school. And so their thinking is that ritual should be in one place and your art should be in another. And I don't have that belief because I know personally how I feel when I'm in a temple. I know how the movement makes me feel, and I want to be able to do that within my work, and so I fuse the two together. Also, the challenge with that is that I cannot share everything. There has to be some things that I need to keep for myself. I need to keep for the spiritualists, right? And so it's an ongoing struggle. Like, it's not easy, even though I say I do that. I have to also be mindful and I have to be aware of certain things that are sacred, because it is sacred, But it plays in my work still. I choreograph pieces that really pertain to healing. In fact, I have a piece that I performed, my company performed in Ethnic Dance Festival in 2010. And I am putting it together, revamping the piece to perform it at Rara Tulime's 20th anniversary. So and because I've grown in my spirituality, that piece has grown from 2010. And you have to see it now. It's totally different. It's 25 minutes. I had 10 minutes for every dance festival, now it's 25. So I have a lot to say. So a lot has transpired within those years from 2010 to 2024. And so I've added more prayers, more ritual elements to the piece. So it's evolving, and as it evolves, I'm also evolving with it and getting more comfortable with sharing particular things. But then also identifying as, a folklorist, a spiritualist, a dancer, a choreographer, and fusing all of those things together. Did that answer your question? Okay, cool.
Thank you, Portsha. I look forward to seeing the piece.
Thank you.
Something Kiazi and I talk about all the time is this sort of misperception that some people have of tradition is something static. And for those of us who are part of cultural institutions and individual artists who are applying for grants funding, for example, important financial resources to support our work, we've often seen funders feeling like, oh, we want to support new and innovative work, and you all, XYZ artists, you're just repeating the same thing that's been done hundreds of years, so why should we support you? That kind of thing. So, come back next week for a full 90-minute discussion on traditions in contemporary times, but because that topic really seeps into so many of our artist dialogues, Kiazi, I'm going to wonder if you can talk a little bit about that. And I say that, Ms. Portsha just said, like, sometimes you're doing this great thing and, wow, your teacher may not like it. So sometimes you had to resist your teacher who's, Akil said, well, you're God. And how can you question your God? Kiazi, I wonder if you want to touch a little bit about that, because that is part of the resistance. The teacher, they resist you, and then you have to resist back. Talk a little bit about your personal experiences with that. Yeah? Here.
Sure, I can start. Lots of thoughts. And if you were here this morning, you might have heard some of them already. But I think first and foremost, my queerness is extremely central to myself and my work. And that being able to just acknowledge the fact that I'm queer openly is already an act of resistance against half of my teachers. So I think I was born resisting whether I wanted to or not. And I think that's the first resistance that, really, it's inseparable from most of what I do, is because if I come from a background where I'm told never come out, okay, I've already resisted by just existing. But I think, sorry, now I've completely lost my train of thought. I think, as you were all have mentioned, seeing tradition as living and breathing, I think, is really important when we come to these moments of tension, and being willing to at least talk to yourself and to the people that do support you and say, no, this is traditional. It's traditional to me, because I don't think many people view my work as traditional or necessarily cultural in the traditional sense, because we have very bounded and static views of culture. But my culture is not being entirely Indian. I'm not 100% Indian, and I wasn't born and raised in India. That's not my culture. My culture is being born and raised in California as an Indian American queer person. And so my work is extremely cultural and authentic and traditional to that experience. And so I think for me, so much of it is being able to reframe what we consider culture, what we consider tradition, because tradition is not objectifying non-white cultures and making them static. Tradition is authenticity, right? And figuring out what's authentic to different people and different groups of people in different communities. And so, I've definitely faced resistance in various ways. And I think what to me feels traditional and authentic to myself is resisting a lot of the exoticized and very colonial ideas of what tradition is that are often projected upon me as like, you should be doing colorful Indian dance, you should be celebrating beautiful India, you should be doing all of these things, when that's not my experience and that's not not what's traditional or authentic to me. So I don't know if that might have strayed away from your question, but those are some thoughts.
Thank you, Akil, I'm so inspired by my young friend here for being so courageous, because I know you personally have experienced a lot of harm in these traditional cultural dance spaces. There's a group performing at our festival September 8th, Ishami Dance Company, was formed partly due to so many young artists experiencing harm in traditional South Asian dance spaces. What they do is so beautiful, so healing, so culturally specific, and yet so universal. When I saw their show last year. So, Kiazi, I'm wondering if you could address this sort of, yes, we talked about cultural communities, cultural artists resisting outside forces, but what if folks inside your own cultural community really push back on what you're trying to do as a culture? I mean, I know you see yourself as a cultural artist, and they say that is not tradition, that is not culture. I'm not sure, you see yourself as a traditional artist, and yeah, like, you have to resist like outside, but also what about folks in your own cultural community? I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, and what do you do about that?
Yeah, no, thank you. I think for me, there's a lot that comes up there. I think first and foremost, asking what my motivation, my goals are, outside of feeling connected to my tradition. It healing me, it keeps me going. What's the point of sharing it, right? And when I look at the history of African people in Congo, and I look at the history of African people in the Americas, a lot of that history and culture was taken away. So in being a culture bearer, there's a certain element that I have kind of charged myself with. And I think myself, because I think that my father and many of the other African artists are trying to be a bridge to reconnect. And I'll be quick because I know we're on time. Yeah, being a bridge to reconnect, right? And so there are a lot of internal debates that happen, generational, where older generations are looking at young ones like, what was that movement right there? Or what's the name of that step? Or what's the, and I think that those debates can be healthy because you start to peel back where things have shifted, and you can identify. For me, I try to figure out, okay, if I have a teacher, somebody that I look up to, and I want to maintain a relationship, then there's a healthy discussion, and I understand, okay, out of 10 things that you want to really keep the tradition, if I'm going like 7 or 8, and then the other few I have to adjust the same way you had to adjust with your teachers that taught you, then I'm okay, right? Because ultimately, if you have those healthy relationships across generations, you want to keep them. You mentioned, my father used to always tell me that your parents and your teachers are your gods on earth. So he would always tell me, like, if you mess up, there was a way to let me know that was the hierarchy. There's God above, but on this earth, I'm your God. So like, in the culture, that means that what they say goes. So the blessing, the approval is super important, and when you're feeling like you're kind of navigating in a way where you might not get it, it can be harsh and challenging. But ultimately, for me, the way I've navigated that is just trying to explain if I'm still carrying on the purpose of this tradition with making adjustments to current times, am I good? And that can kind of go here and there personally, and I'll end the question here. Like, I play the ngoma, and one of the ways that I'm moving with my music, a humble brag, there's a card there with a QR code. I had an album come out in March, so if you're interested in some good music, you can scan it. But anyways, I'm using my instrument to cross over with other forms of music. right? To bring people's ear a little bit closer and to a sound that they might not be used to digesting. It's like if you go to Jamba Juice or somewhere and you get that wheat shot that's bitter, or you have a kid that doesn't like to eat vegetables that are really good for them. You might have to dress it up in something else for them to realize that, oh shit, that was broccoli? For real? I like broccoli. You know what I mean? So it's being kind of creative around how to deliver something that is good for people to digest that they may not know. So that's kind of the next walk of my journey in music, and to keep tradition but still maintaining sensitive to the challenges or changes that are happening currently.
Alleluia.
This is Morgan. So I just want to respond to that question about ritual ceremony on stage, and the kind of the tension with teachers. I don't look at it as resistance. First of all, once you remove the ceremony or the ritual from that place to another place, it's already something else. And so it's also the intention of what the ritual or the ceremony is going to be. My work is very much like that. I don't say, oh, this is a ritual from the Ipat or Katsakai or Kaliwana, whatever, because it's not. It could never be. It needs to happen there. However, what it is an expansion of what is ritual and what is ceremony to the diaspora. So it's really an important kind of distinction, because it doesn't diminish the spirituality of that work. Of course, you go to where it originated, and you will feel something else that's a lot stronger. But again, we are creating grace here. We are learning. We are creating. We are the creators as well. So it's going to be different. And I think, I feel like it's okay to expand as long as we know the foundation, the root, that, like, you can't break it if you don't know what the heck you're doing. You're just making shit up, basically, right? And that's not going to work. So, anyway, I don't know what that means.
Thank you, Alleluia. We have time for one more audience question, comment. I'm going to bring the microphone over here.
Hi, my name is Rona. I'm a knight. And I guess my question is sort of jumping off of some of the things that I've heard. So I feel like there's, I love dance. I've danced since I was a little girl. I've danced with Alleluia. And I feel like so many people are intimidated by dance. But to me, like, if people dance the dances I know you all did, they would feel in their bodies like the evolution of history, culture. They could understand, like, I've done a lot of Afro sport dance. Like, those dances are alive today, and all the social dances that people are doing, in kind of another form, right? And so you feel it in your body. And so my comment, I guess that was a question here, is I feel like this culture, especially in the US, we're so disconnected from our bodies, right? That the head. So I come out of a community organizing background, so I do a lot of political work, and the dance stuff is not happening in those movement spaces. It's ironic we call them movements because there's very little movement in the body happening in those spaces. And even sometimes the chanting at rallies, I'm like, y'all are offbeat. Like, I don't know what's going on here. This is not happening here, right? And so I guess, like, I'm looking for like spots of hope, in like what you all have seen or noticed in, Kiazi, you talked about crossing over. Like, I feel like when people see, for example, Filipino martial arts in maybe action movies, they go, oh, what's that? Oh, that's Kali. That's a Filipino martial art. And they go look for it and they find out more about it. And so I want to believe that there's more ways that people can interact with dance outside of coming to a dance class, or there's some things that get them to come to a dance class. I'm so excited that Moderator is doing free shows there, because now I think that's, people are going to see it and go, oh, I want to take a class. Whereas before they'd be like, oh, I can't, I'm not a dancer. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, how you all see, like, some areas of hope and expansion of your work, because I feel like everybody should see all of your work and come to all your classes, but people just get intimidated, at the same time. They're like, I don't do that. I don't want to take African dance class, I'm not sure. And to me, those are like the most welcoming, amazing spaces to get exercise and be in your body. But I think people are just scared, you know what I mean? So, I don't know.
I have a few quick, ways for hope. So I think me personally, I'm just figured that I need to really make the extra effort to reach out. And so a few ways that I've been doing to try to make those connections. I've tried to become a lot more active on social media because that's just where people consume. You know, that's where the youth are. That's where a lot of people are just scrolling, you know. And so I've tried to make videos that are appealing and kind of make people, you know, are a little bit more interested. And I think that those have been doing pretty well. And I've also been collaborating with community groups in the inner city to introduce drumming in particular. There's a pretty well-known local artist, a rap artist, Mr. Fab, who's based in Oakland, who does, I think it's now bi-monthly thug therapy, which are kind of therapy sessions that are for males from all walks of life, not only African Americans, but just because the Western culture, many of our communities don't really encourage therapy, and it's kind of weird because the same way we encourage health and you go to the gym because it's your physical health, you go to the doctor because it's the health. Like there's a mental health aspect that we shouldn't be frowned upon, or if you need to like talk to somebody. So this is a space where healing has happened, and I saw it. And I'm like, shucks. I reached out. And I'm just like, man, like the music and the culture and the drum has a huge role in today's society in the Congo for healing. And so I feel like he has on staff therapists, right, that kind of take care of the mental part, and the music addresses the spiritual part of that healing that opens up a whole nother. So that's another way that I've done. We've created a partnership there, and I drum and perform, and we're trying to look at ways to make, to get audience members and participants more open and willing to participate, because the same way like here, especially amongst a lot of the brothers, it's like we don't dance and we don't clap, so people just sit up and watch us. So the next stage is to really get people more engaged and open that up. But that's kind of how I would tackle that.
I just want to make a comment about that. This part of our conversation reminds me of what one of our board members, Dr. Victor Torres, has told me. He directs a 50-year-old Mexican folkloric dance troupe. And he was telling me that this dance group is based in Fresno State and was created at Fresno State when Fresno State threatened to cancel their Chicano Studies program. So this particular dance group is very much rooted in the civil rights movement. He went on to tell me that very often in civil rights marches, the folkloric groups, music and dance, are often front and center in the front of the marches. And that is the symbol of resistance, of civil rights in that particular community. Kiazi earlier also talked about your father's journey, but also for the artists in Oakland, how the artists got together and fought for access and hopefully in future ownership of the Malonga Cascalor Performing Arts Center. So there are plenty examples of artists in collective activism, either directly through music or dance or not, running for political offices, for example. So part of the goal of this particular program is to open up that information and hopefully in the next DNC, we saw that in this past week DNC there was lots and lots of music. Hopefully next round we will see a more expansive musical presentation in those political rallies, right? It's a start, and I'd love to talk to you on one-on-one afterwards. As we open up these dialogues, how can we make that happen? All right. Did you have a quick comment, or we're gonna pivot to?
It's not at all quick, but don't worry.
Yeah.
I know this will be good. You want to say it? So I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the work that you all do in keeping your traditions alive and developing the traditions into something new, but like especially in a sort of white European dominant colonizing culture, right, as a minority. Because I think like, we haven't talked about this at all, but it's like the biggest elephant in the room is that there's still so much racism around non-European forms of dance. And I get it as like a white person, my friends were like, oh, why don't you have your kids do ballet? Like, why are you going to do capoeira and Afro-Cuban dance? That's, so raw. And there's this inherent contemptuous racism, and it's precisely about the quality that you're describing that is so healing about many of these art forms, which is the ability to express raw emotions, sexuality, aggression, community, passion and zest for life, spirituality. And it's precisely this raw expression of emotion that is so shunned by a lot of like European, especially American Anglo-Saxon culture. And so I think that the work that you do in and of itself is resistance and protest. And even when, like, as an extremely privileged member of the society, I encounter it, I realize how hard it must be for you to live in that, every single day and work in that and fight and resist. So I just want to say how much I appreciate that and how much I enjoy the dance and music art forms that I do, and from the African diaspora and from around the world. And just to give props to you guys and thank you for all this.
Yes, our collective learning continues. As we wrap up this conversation, I want to ask speakers, do you have any last comments, pearls of wisdom?
Is there time for one quick question
Oh,
in the
yes.
back row?
Can everybody hear?
I think that part of I'm Pat Dowles. I'm a John choreographer. I'm also a professor of dance.
And we've been discussing this a lot, the decolonization of the form and the bias you just mentioned around dance. There's a great book called Dance and Belonging by Crystal Davis that talks about the implicit and explicit bias of Western forms in particularly studio settings in academia. And I think part of the issue here is that we're separating culture as others. And everybody is culture, everybody has their own culture, and to say cultural dance is this and ballet is that is part of the issue. That's part of the problem. They're all dance. They all come from a culture. They all had a seed in culture. And so to call it the Ethnic Dance Festival separates the other, and that's the funding issue right there. And to say that tradition is static is also an important piece of the reframing that you mentioned, Nikhil. So I think that's where the World Arts Festival needs to move next, is to remove that layer that culture is only othered or marginalized people, and say we all are cultural dance forms, and this is what this culture does, and this is what this culture does, and it's all dance. And some layers of it move into spirit, and some layers of it move into the proscenium stage. And reframe it so that it becomes more of the normal, we all need to be moving, that the body is the healing place. You mentioned it at the beginning. My ancestors in Mexico used movement to heal their bodies. Dance is a part of our culture from day one. And the colonized practice is very different. It's the baile folklorico that you see on stage with the skirts was not part of my indigenous practice. So there's a lot to layer there. And I think the problem lies with the separation of Western and other. Thank you. Agreed. Kiazi, board member, myself, staff member, Noah, too. We had this conversation within the World Arts West team for many months, and collectively decided not to use the name Ethnic Dance Festival anymore. So the name of our organization is World Arts West. It really made sense for us to call the festival World Arts West Dance Festival. This is our second year calling it the World Arts West Dance Festival. If you have questions regarding our festival evolution, There's a 4-page FAQ sheet in the front, as well as a digital form. Our organization is continuing to learn, continue to decolonize, continuing to hopefully be an increasingly inclusive organization to fight exclusivity as we're continuing to learn. So please, help us learn. We want to learn from you. So grateful for the cultural artists, cultural bearers who came in and pushed us and helped us have this honest conversation. This is just the beginning. We hope to have many honest conversations in the future. If you have topics that you would like us to cover in future community circles and artist dialogues, please come and talk to me. Also, our staff and board members, volunteers are in the front. And you can also contact us at info@moreartswest.org or call our main number, the QR codes in the front. So we look forward to continue to be in community with you, continue to learn together, and continue to move towards collective liberation. Yes. Thank you so much for being here today.